Three children vanished during a school picnic in 1977, gone without a trace, in broad daylight, surrounded by teachers and classmates. No cries for help, no signs of struggle, just silence and then panic. What followed shattered families, broke friendships, and haunted a quiet town for years. The case went cold, until 6 years later when one chilling discovery unraveled everything. You think you know how this ends? You don't. Watch till the end. And don't forget to subscribe *** for more gripping true crime stories that will keep you up all night. October 18th, 1977 was a Tuesday, cloudless and mild for that time of year in Dunley, Pennsylvania, a dying town surrounded by thick woods, old quarries, and memories no one wanted to revisit. There was a strange stillness that morning, the kind of silence that felt like a hell breath. A feeling most adults brushed off, but a few of the older folks, the ones who still remembered the mine collapses and the odd disappearances of the 40s, paused longer on their porches. They knew that silence like a prayer that never gets answered. The children of Roosevelt Primary School didn't know any of that. For them, the day was simply the annual fall field trip, a chance to escape the stuffy classrooms and spelling drills. Hollow Pines Preserve, about 30 minutes north of Dunley, was the destination. A sprawling state forest with picnic tables, trails, and a shallow creek that shimmered when the sun broke through the rust-colored canopy of trees. The three buses rolled out of the school parking lot at 9:07 a.m., each one filled with laughter, peanut butter sandwiches, juice boxes, and teachers already regretting their career choices. Among the 22 first and second graders on the second bus were three children who would never come back. Henry Caldwell, age 8, the type who memorized maps and asked questions no one had answers for. Anna Delgado, also 8, observant, cautious, always holding her little brother's hand in crowds. And her brother Lucas, just 5, small for his age, quiet but always smiling like he knew something no one else did. They arrived at Hollow Pines at 9:41 a.m. The children were herded off the buses in a burst of energy, and the teachers, 4 of them plus a parent volunteer, gathered the group in a loose semicircle to go over the rules. Stay within sight. No wandering past the trail signs. Stay out of the creek unless told otherwise. Roll call was done again, checked twice. Nothing seemed off. Not yet. By 10:20 a.m., they'd laid out the picnic blankets, played games near the tree stumps, and taken turns on the splintered wooden swings. Henry, Anna, and Lucas were seen together by several adults and students. Henry had a sketch pad with him and was trying to draw the old Rangers shed across the field. Anna was helping Lucas peel a stubborn clementine. Everything, by all accounts, was normal. At 10:37 a.m., a teacher named Mrs. Fernwood noticed that the three were no longer near the picnic area. She assumed they'd gone to the restroom cabin just 30 yards up the dirt path. Another teacher had seen them walking that direction only minutes earlier. No one panicked. Not yet. But 20 minutes passed. Then 30. By 11:10 a.m., they weren't back. That's when Mrs. Fernwood and the parent volunteer, a woman named Carol McIntyre, went to check the restrooms. The stalls were empty. A thin layer of pine needles coated the floor, untouched. No footprints. No wrappers. Nothing. They checked the nearby trail entrance. Just a short loop, marked with yellow paint. No sign of the children. Another 20 minutes slipped by while the teachers fanned out, calling their names. Henry, Anna, Lucas, echoed through the trees, absorbed by the forest without answer. At 11:39 a.m., the teachers used the emergency channel on their walkie-talkies to contact park rangers. The call to local police came at 11:45 a.m., and the buses were immediately locked down. The remaining children were gathered and recounted. 3 missing. Just 3. By noon, the forest had changed. The warm, harmless autumn air had cooled. Shadows grew longer though the sun was still high. By 12:40 p.m., 2 rangers for teachers and 3 deputies were combing the paths, calling out, checking underfoot bridges through bushes around fallen logs. They found nothing. No broken branches. No lost shoes. No torn yakits. Just a half-drawn sketch pad lying by a mossy stump. The beginning of a roof and some rough pencil lines barely visible. It was Henry's. By 1:30 p.m., parents were being called. By 2:10 p.m., patrol cars and search dogs arrived. By 3:22 p.m., the entire Hollow Pines Preserve had been shut down. And by 5 p.m., the search had turned into something else, something silent, grim, heavy with things no one dared speak out loud. The parents arrived in waves. Evelyn Caldwell, Henry's mother, burst into sobs before she was even told anything, as though her body already knew. Tomas and Yvonne Delgado arrived just minutes apart, both having come from different jobs. Yvonne collapsed when she saw the search teams, clutching her chest as if her lungs had abandoned her. Tomas screamed at the rangers, screamed for not watching the kids, for not fencing the woods, for letting his children slip away like smoke. They stayed at the park until after dark, pacing, begging, arguing. Evelyn had to be sedated by a paramedic after she screamed herself hoarse. Tomas refused to leave and had to be physically restrained from charging into the forest with a flashlight and a kitchen knife. That night, the news broke across Pennsylvania. 3 children missing from Dunley school field trip. Grainy photos of Henry, Anna, and Lucas filled the television screen. Candlelight vigils sprung up across town. Flyers with black and white pictures were stapled to every lamppost, shop window, and diner wall from Dunley to Harrisburg. The faces of the missing children became inescapable. The search lasted 13 days. 54 officers, 12 bloodhounds, helicopters, thermal imaging, psychic volunteers. Nothing. Not a shred of clothing. Not a footprint beyond the first few at the trailhead. A local man, Gerald Falk, was detained for questioning after he was found sleeping in his truck near the park entrance with binoculars and an old Polaroid camera. But nothing linked him. No evidence. Just another lonely soul with bad timing. By November 5th, the official search was called off. The families refused to accept it. Tomas Delgado quit his job at the auto shop and started mapping the forest himself. He walked every trail, found old cellars, broken fences, lost caves left over from the quarrying days. He even claimed he found a child's shoe once, deep in a hollow, but police dismissed it. Wrong size, wrong color. Just coincidence. Evelyn Caldwell stopped talking to her husband. Grief made her brittle, paranoid. She believed Henry was taken, not lost. She carried his sketch pad with her like scripture, convinced that something was hidden in the last unfinished drawing. She had it enlarged, outlined, examined under UV light. Nothing ever came of it, but she never let it go. Yvonne Delgado began recording herself speaking to Anna and Lucas each night. She left the tapes playing in the children's empty room, as if they might somehow hear them wherever they were. The town changed. People avoided Hollow Pines. Teachers quit. Parents refused to let their children outside, unsupervised. Whispers spread that the forest was cursed, that something old and evil lived there, that the ground swallowed the children whole. Rational voices said they wandered too far, maybe fell down a sinkhole or into a creek and were swept away. But no bodies ever surfaced. And without a trace, reason had no foothold. 6 months after the disappearance, Evelyn started a campaign for a private investigation. She sold her car, drained her savings, hired a man named Roger Mears, an ex-cop turned PI with a limp and a bottle problem. He combed the area, tracked down past visitors, re-interviewed witnesses, even brought in a forensic botanist who claimed to find anomalous spore patterns near the picnic site. It all led nowhere. Tomas, meanwhile, began collecting stories. From ex-miners, from old men who remembered screams in the trees back in '43, from a recluse who claimed hollow pines had been used for strange gatherings in the 1920s. No one listened to him, not really. Most of the town saw a man descending into obsession. But there were a few, like Evelyn, who wondered if maybe, just maybe, something unnatural had touched their children's lives. 2 years in, the marriages had collapsed. Evelyn lived alone in a studio apartment, the walls papered with theories. Tomas moved to a cabin near the park and rarely came into town. Yvonne stopped speaking publicly altogether. She started sleeping during the day and walking the streets at night, listening, always listening. The 6th anniversary passed with little ceremony. Until one day, October 14th, 1983, 4 days before the anniversary, everything changed. And it started with a phone call. A strange voice. A woman no one recognized. She didn't give her name. Just 4 words that turned the cold ashes of hope into something flickering and dangerous again. I saw your daughter. The call came to the old landline in Evelyn Caldwell's apartment at 9:16 p.m. on a Friday night, October 14th, 1983. Evelyn had been sitting in her usual spot by the window, a blanket around her legs, the sketch pad on her lap, as always. She didn't answer it right away. Calls at that hour are never good. The machine picked up. Her voice, calm but brittle, echoed through the room. "This is Evelyn Caldwell. Please leave your message." Then came the woman's voice. Low, uneven, almost whispering. "I saw your daughter." The message was followed by silence. No click, no sound of a phone being hung up. Just silence. Evelyn sat there frozen. The phrase repeated in her mind, though it wasn't even technically true. Anna Delgado wasn't her daughter. But the voice had said, "Your daughter. Not Anna. Not Henry. Not Lucas. Just your daughter." She replayed the tape at least 20 times before calling the number back. The line was dead. 2 hours later, she was at the police station, holding the cassette like it was radioactive. Detective Leon Maddox, who had worked the case 6 years ago as a rookie, was now seasoned, tired-eyed, and on his 3rd failed marriage. He listened to the message, frowning, jaw clenched tight. "It could be a prank," he said after the 4th replay, "or a wrong number." Then explain how she knew. Evelyn hissed. "Why now? Why say that?" Maddox rubbed his temple. "I'll have it traced, okay? But after 6 years." Evelyn cut him off. Don't say it." She left the station more awake than she'd been in years. That voice had stirred something in her bones. Not hope, exactly. Something darker. Something feral. She called Tomas next. He answered after 2 rings, voice hoarse from sleep or whiskey. She said she saw Anna. Evelyn said without preamble. There was a pause. Long. Then who? "A woman. Left a message on my machine tonight." "What did she say exactly?" "I'll play it for you. Come over." Tomas was there in 20 minutes. He looked older, heavier in spirit than in body. His beard was overgrown, eyes red-rimmed. But the fire in him hadn't gone out. Not entirely. When he heard the tape, his hands began to tremble. "That's her," he said suddenly. "Who?" "I don't know. But I've heard that voice before. In the woods. 5 years ago." Evelyn blinked. "You never said anything. You wouldn't have believed me." "I didn't believe me." The next morning, they drove to the only person they thought might help. Roger Mears, the private investigator Evelyn had hired years ago. He'd since retired, ran a bait shop in Linwood, and lived in the small apartment above it. Mears didn't argue. He didn't ask why they were there. He just poured coffee and played the tape on his own equipment. "I'll see what I can pull," he muttered. Sometimes even disconnected lines leave traces. The next 3 days were a kind of fever dream. Evelyn couldn't sleep. Tomas began visiting again every night, always bringing stacks of old notebooks, sketches, maps he had drawn of the park. They went through everything. Again, names, locations, faces. Then on October 18th, exactly 6 years since the disappearance, Mears called them back. "I traced the call," he said, voice taut. "You're not going to like where it came from. Try me." The number originated from a private line inside Claremont Hills, specifically from the outpatient mental facility in the East Wing. Room 212. A patient named Delia Green. Tomas was already reaching for his jacket. Claremont Hills was an hour east. A massive stone building built in the 1930s. It looked like something out of a forgotten war. Cracked windows, vines curling up its sides, wind whistling like a choir of ghosts. Evelyn had passed it 100 times over the years and never once thought to connect it to anything. They were stopped at the entrance by a nurse. "She's not supposed to have phone access," the nurse said, adjusting her glasses. "She's mute. Has been since she was brought in." "Brought in when?" Evelyn asked. "July 1982. Found wandering in the woods near Coldwater Lake. Dressed in children's clothes. Malnourished. Nonverbal." She responds to the name Delia, but we don't know if that's really hers. Could have been a runaway, but she had old scars, like someone had kept her locked up. They insisted on seeing her. Room 212 was a sterile box. Pale green walls, metal-framed bed, one window barred with steel. A woman sat in the corner, curled into herself like a comma. Long, unbrushed hair, maybe 30, maybe 25, thin as kindling. When they entered, she didn't react, not even a flinch. Delia, Tomas said quietly. No response. Evelyn stepped closer. Her voice cracked as she spoke. Did you see my son? Something flickered in the woman's eyes. Barely, but it was there. We think you called me, Evelyn added. On October 14th, said you saw my daughter. The woman turned her head slowly. She pointed at Evelyn, then at Tomas, then at the far wall. There was nothing on the wall, nothing visible, but Tomas's eyes widened. There were 3 of them, he whispered. She's saying there were 3. Delia, if that was her name, began rocking, back and forth, humming. Mears contacted an audiologist, had the voice on the answering machine analyzed, compared it to recordings of Delia's humming, subtle background noises captured from the hospital surveillance system. It was a match. She spoke once, Mears said. Only once. To you. That night, Evelyn had a dream. She was back at Hollow Pines. Only the trees were black. Not burnt, just black, as though ink had bled through the forest. The sketch pad was in her lap, but every time she tried to turn a page, a child's whisper stopped her. Don't. When she woke up, she was crying. The next day, Tomas received a package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a worn children's book, Asterisk the Boy Who Found the Hollow Door Star. He opened it to the center and froze. There was a photo tucked between the pages. A blurry Polaroid. 3 children, standing in what looked like a stone room. That wall. Bare light bulb above. One of the children was unmistakably Lucas. Even older, his eyes were the same. Wide, frightened, still holding his sister's hand. They took the photo to Maddox. This can't be real, Maddox muttered. Where did you get this? It was mailed to us. He ran fingerprint tests. The only prints found belonged to Evelyn and Tomas. No posti stamp. No postmark. Nothing. Mears enhanced the photo. Behind the children, faint, almost imperceptible, was a symbol scratched into the wall. A perfect circle with a single vertical line bisecting it. Evelyn didn't recognize it. Tomas did. It's in one of the caves near Hollow Pines, he said slowly. I saw it carved into a stone door 5 years ago. What kind of door? Evelyn asked. The kind that doesn't open. By October 22nd, a private search had been organized. Not by the police, by the parents. They hired climbers, former military trackers, and a geologist who specialized in natural cavern systems. They entered Hollow Pines again, for the first time since the official search ended. 2 days in, they found it. The cave Tomas had marked in his notebook, half covered by vines, not visible from the trail. The symbol was there, faint, carved into stone. No door, but a narrow shaft descending into darkness. The air that came out of it smelled wrong, not of death, but of time, of secrets too old to explain. They descended with gear, cameras, rope, lights. What they found was not a room. It was a series of tunnels, winding, carved, reinforced with old timbers that shouldn't have survived this long. At the bottom, a single iron cot, rusted, chains on one side, and a child's drawing, faded, stuck to the wall with a rusty nail. A drawing of 3 children, holding hands, and behind them, a shadow taller than the trees. The drawing was old, edges curled, smeared with moisture. The paper faded to a sickly yellow-gray, but the lines were unmistakable. 3 stick-figure children, hand in hand, and behind them, a towering silhouette. Its head scraped the top of the page, its limbs angular and spidery, with long fingers that stretched down like vines. The moment Evelyn saw it, something broke open inside her. Not hope, not yet, but a crack in the wall of years she'd built to keep herself upright. Because the middle child in the drawing, small, with a bow in her hair and a line under one eye, was clearly meant to be Anna. She used to draw herself like that, always with a bow, always with one sad eye. No one spoke for a long time. Just the heavy silence of the cave pressing in like a second atmosphere. Then Mears, crouched beside the drawing, said in a voice barely above a whisper, "Whoever kept them here, they let them draw. They photographed everything. The cot, the wall, the crude ladder that led back out. But there were no names, no initials, no rope fibers or clothing scraps or bones or buttons or anything to tell them what happened after that drawing was tacked to the wall. It was like the place had been scrubbed clean and then left behind to rot. Back on the surface, Evelyn and Tomas didn't speak on the ride home. It was nearly midnight when they returned to town, and the sky above Dunley looked strange, too dark, as if the stars themselves were hiding. 2 days later, another envelope arrived. This one was hand-delivered, left outside Evelyn's apartment door, tucked into the seam between doorframe and brick. Inside was another Polaroid. This time, there were only 2 children, Anna and Henry. No Lucas. Both of them appeared older than 6 years it should have made them. Anna's hair was longer. Henry looked thinner, his expression more guarded, cautious. They stood in front of something new, a wooden wall covered in carvings. Letters, numbers, drawings overlapping each other. A patchwork of desperate communication. And in the corner of the photo, a boot, worn leather, part of a leg, an adult. Mears spent the next week trying to find out who was delivering the photos. He placed a camera outside Evelyn's apartment, hired a teenager to sit in a parked car across the street for 4 nights straight. Nothing. No one came or went. It was as if the photos materialized out of thin air. Meanwhile, Tomas couldn't sleep. He returned to the cave every night, sometimes alone, sometimes with one of the searchers. He found another passage, sealed off with rusted bars. They tried to cut through them, but the metal was thick, the space tight. On the 4th night, Tomas heard something. He swore by it. A scraping sound, a child voice, whispering something low and fast. Over and over. He dropped his flashlight. It rolled away, blinked out, and when he turned to run, he claimed he felt a hand, small, cold, grab his own. Just for a moment. He didn't go back after that. Yvonne, who had remained silent through all of it, finally cracked. It happened at the candlelight vigil held on October 31st, 6 years to the day since the children vanished. She walked on a makeshift stage in front of the church, where news crews had gathered. Reporters ready with questions. Lights on, tapes rolling, and she spoke for the first time in years. "They're not dead," she said. "I never thought they were. I see my daughter every night." Someone from the crowd shouted, "What do you mean?" "She's not alone. She's with Henry. Sometimes Lucas. But there's something else. Something watching them. It's big. I don't know what it is, but I know it's real." People whispered. Some wept. Others scoffed. Yvonne kept talking. They were taken. Not by a person. By a place. Something under that forest. Something old. Something that never forgot how to want. The church lights flickered once, just for a second. Most thought it was just faulty wiring. A few didn't. The next day, a journalist named Andrea Quinn showed up at Evelyn's door. She claimed to be from the Pennsylvania Inquirer, but her credentials were fake. Mears checked. Andrea Quinn didn't exist. But the woman who called herself Andrea knew details no one had published. Descriptions of the cave. The symbols. Even the exact time of Evelyn's call from the so-called mute woman at Claremont Hills. "I need to show you something," she said. "But not here." They met that night in a motel outside town. Andrea, or whoever she really was, spread out old documents on the bed. Newspaper clippings from 1929. Missing children from a summer camp. 3 girls, ages 7 to 9, disappeared into the woods during a nature hike. No bodies. No tracks. Just gone. "It happened before," Andrea said. "Always in 3s. Every 30 years. She had more. Articles from 1898. A logging family near the same forest. 3 children gone during a storm. The mother later claimed she saw them in the trees, calling to her, smiling, as something behind them held them in place. Each case was unconnected. Different towns, different names, but always the same pattern. 3 children. Missing. No resolution. Andrea leaned closer. "I think your kids weren't taken by a person. I think they were taken by something that lives there." What do you mean? Evelyn asked. Andrea hesitated. I think it feeds off them, she whispered. Not by killing, but by keeping, trapping them in time. Like pets, or prisoners, or something worse. Evelyn's stomach turned. Why them? Andrea pulled out a final photo. It was a grainy copy of an old newspaper picture. 3 girls from 1929, smiling on the steps of cabin. The one in the middle looked exactly like Delia. Evelyn stared at the photo until her eyes blurred. They come back sometimes, Andrea said, but they're not the same. Later that night, Evelyn found herself staring at Henry's last drawing again. The roof of the ranger's shed, the trees behind it, the faint outline of a door that never appeared in any other photo of the shed. It wasn't real, or it had been real once and no longer was. The next day, Evelyn returned to Hollow Pines with Mears and Tomas. She brought the sketch pad, and a question no one wanted to ask. What if the door is still there, just not for everyone? They wandered back to the shed, the same one from Henry's sketch. Same crooked roof, same moss on the side. And then, for just a moment, when the wind blew hard and the sun shifted behind the clouds, Evelyn saw it. A seam in the wall, a door-shaped outline. Gone the next second, but it was enough. That night, she dreamed of the door again. But this time, she opened it. Inside was a room filled with drawings. Hundreds, maybe thousands, all of children, all of shadows behind them. In the dream, she turned and saw a figure watching her from the corner. Not a monster, not a ghost. A man, smiling, wearing Henry's shirt. The face in her dream lingered long after Evelyn woke. Henry's face, but not quite. The eyes were wrong. Too calm, too old. The kind of eyes that had seen too much and remembered all of it. He hadn't spoken, just stared and smiled. For the first time in 6 years, Evelyn didn't feel like she was chasing shadows. She felt like the shadows had started chasing her. The next morning, Tomas was already waiting on her stoop. He held a newspaper in one hand and a thermos of black coffee in the other. He didn't say anything at first, just handed her the paper. Front page, lower right corner. Mysterious break-in at Claremont Hills. Patients unharmed. East Wing ransacked. The article was vague. No arrests. No suspects. Several patients moved due to stress response. No mention of room 212. No mention of Delia. I went there last night, Tomas said quietly. Evelyn's heart stopped. Why? Because I couldn't stop thinking about her. About the way she pointed. About how she knew us. What did you do? I broke into the archives. Took some files. Evelyn glanced around before pulling him inside. He opened his coat and pulled out 2 thin folders. They were water-stained, singed at the edges. One was labeled green, D. The other, unknown female. 1982 admittance. She was found 3 miles from Coldwater Lake, Tomas said. Unconscious. Starved. Her fingerprints don't match anyone on record. And here's the kicker. She had an implant in her arm. Something like an ID chip. In 1982? Evelyn asked. That doesn't make sense. Exactly. They say it was experimental tech. Military. But it wasn't supposed to be used on children. Why would a child have an implant? I don't think she was a child. Evelyn sat back, pulse racing. You think she was from before? Tomas nodded. One of the others. From another set of 3. But why show up now? Why call me? Because she remembered. Because she broke whatever spell that place put on her. Evelyn whispered, or someone let her go. That afternoon, Mears called. Another package had arrived. This time, it was addressed to Yvonne Delgado. It was waiting at the post office. No return address. Hand-delivered by someone using the name A. Quinn. Inside was a single object, a hair ribbon. Red. Faded. Still curled like it had been tied around something for years. Yvonne hadn't worn red since 1977, and Anna had only ever worn that color on the day of the picnic. Yvonne didn't cry. She just took the ribbon and sat with it for over an hour, staring. She's alive, she finally said. How can you be sure? Because this still smells like her. Later that evening, Evelyn received one final call. No machine, no recording, just a voice, clear, young, barely above a whisper. Come to the ranger shed. Then the line went dead. She didn't wait. She didn't call the police. She didn't hesitate. She called Tomas and Mears. They met her at Hollow Pines just after midnight. Flashlights in hand. Tension between them like wires pulled too tight. The shed looked the same as always, weathered, leaning slightly, doors chained shut. But when Evelyn approached, the chain fell off. Just like that. No key, no lock breaking. It just fell. The door creaked open, revealing a narrow space cluttered with old tools, a rusted oil can, a rake with half its teeth missing. But then Evelyn saw it. The sketch, taped to the far wall. Henry's drawing. Completed. The same line she'd stared at for years. Only this version had more. The shed was drawn with exact angles. Inside it, a trapdoor, and under that, a ladder. And below the ladder, a room, dark, narrow, filled with symbols on the walls. A word had been added at the bottom in a child's shaky scrawl. Home. Asterisk, asterisk. They tore up the shed floor. Beneath it, rotten boards. Then dirt. Then stone. A hatch. Old iron. Covered in mold and filth. But still intact. Mirrors dropped first, flashlight sweeping down into nothingness. Evelyn followed. Then Tomas. They descended into a narrow shaft, the air colder than it should have been, dense with the smell of wet earth and something older. Something forgotten. At the bottom was a corridor, crumbling, reinforced by old timber beams blackened with age. The tunnel curved sharply to the left, then down again, then widened, and there they found it. A room, stone walls, carvings covering every inch, faces, trees, symbols, time spiraling in chaotic lines, and 3 cots, empty. Evelyn staggered forward, breathing hard. On one cot was a book, Asterisk the Boy Who Found the Hollow Door Star. On the second was a red hair ribbon, and on the third, a drawing. Fresh, pencils still sharp, 3 children holding hands. Only this time, behind them wasn't the tall shadow. Behind them was a door, wide open, with light pouring out. Tomas choked back a sob. They were here. Mears ran his hand along the wall. There's more. He found a panel. It shifted, a tunnel behind it. They followed it wordless, breathless, every step heavier than the last. At the end, another room, and this one wasn't empty. There were beds, small, clean, food wrappers, flashlights, books, and on the far wall, written in coal, "We're okay. We love you. We remember. But we can't leave. Not yet." Asterisk, asterisk. Evelyn collapsed to her knees. They were alive. They had been here. She pressed her palm to the writing as if it might let her feel Henry's warmth through the wall. "They're trapped," Tomas said. "But not by chains. Not physically. By what then?" Mears turned slowly. "By whatever that place is. It doesn't kill. It keeps. Like a nest. Or a library. Or a ritual. Can we bring them back?" Yvonne asked from behind them. None of them had noticed she'd followed. "I don't know," Mears admitted. "But someone's been letting them out. One by one. Slowly." Evelyn looked back at the wall. "Then we wait. Or we fight." In the months that followed, the forest was closed to the public. No one knew why. No one asked. But the parents returned again and again. And sometimes, just sometimes, they'd find something left behind. A sketchbook page taped to a tree. A note under a rock. Once, a voice recorder with a single message. "Don't stop. Looking. We're getting closer." They never found all 3 children at once. But over the years, they found traces, letters, footprints, sounds. And on one unforgettable night in 1987, 10 years after the picnic, a boy was found wandering near the edge of Coldwater Lake. Malnourished, confused, but alive. His name was Lucas Delgado. He didn't speak for months. When he finally did, his first words were, "She's still in there." He stayed to protect her. "Ooh." Lucas shook his head. "You wouldn't believe me." But Evelyn did. Because that night, she dreamed again. The door, the shadow, and Henry's voice. Not yet, but soon. The town of Dunley moved on. Astonsdu, as people must. But in Hollow Pines, the trees never forgot. And deep underground, beneath roots and rock and time itself, something waited. Not evil, not good, just ancient, just watching, keeping, until the door opened again.